Hello everyone! As the foundation for my future house, I chose the insulated Swedish slab foundation, or insulated Swedish slab. In a separate video, I'll explain what guided my choice of foundation type, what options I considered, and why I ultimately decided to go with the insulated Swedish slab. I'll now discuss the work timeline, focusing on polystyrene foam installation and formwork assembly before the foundation starts. We need to install drainage at the 15th construction site, make a sand cushion, lay the utilities, and only after that can we start assembling the above ground part. You can watch videos about all this on my channel. The previous video ended with me installing the sewage system. After installing the sewage system, I needed to continue. I did the final leveling of my sand cushion using a homemade mop, smoothing the surface to make it level. To get the surface as close to perfect as possible, I used a laser level. The cushion needs to be almost perfectly flat. To make it easier to do the next types of work on the sand cushion, it's best not even to walk on it, so that no footprints are left on the surface. But I can't imagine how that's possible, because the first task you need to do after the final leveling of the sand cushion is to lay out the film. The film is needed as waterproofing, in other words, to prevent capillarity. How can you lay the film over the entire building site without stepping on the sand cushion? I don't get it. In my opinion, it's just not possible. At first I tried to figure out a way not to step on it. Sometimes I put polystyrene underneath so I could walk on the polystyrene, but in the end, it didn't really help. Basically, I wasted a lot of time, and in the end I just gave up and started walking on it, because in my opinion it's pointless to try to avoid stepping on it. I taped all the film seams to avoid breaking the airtight seal, and I also taped the places where the pipes joined. After laying the film, I started laying extruded polystyrene foam under the foundation ribs. I used extruded polystyrene foam called Penaplex Foundation, which is specifically designed for foundations and has increased strength. Under the main floor and the blind area, I used regular Penaplex Comfort. When assembling the polystyrene foam, the sheets need to be staggered to avoid cold joints. Most of the work time is spent creating this staggered pattern. Because of this, you have to cut the sheets and make adjustments to the sheets. Since they have a groove and a ridge, roughly speaking, when you cut the sheet, you have to make the groove or the ridge yourself at the cut. And this takes the most time with sheets that are 50 millimeters thick. I did this using a regular utility knife. Sometimes I forgot that the sheets need to be staggered. Apparently the body tries to minimize effort somehow, and laying them without staggering is much easier, so I forgot about the staggering in some places and had to take everything apart and redo it. Apparently, out of laziness, the body tries to take the path of least resistance, but you can't do it that way, and I need to do it right. If you didn't stagger them, it's better to redo it. In a couple of places where the pipes connect, I didn't redo it because I had already cut the hole for the pipe connection. And I didn't want to throw away the sheet because there was nowhere else to use it, but I messed up the staggering on just 2 sheets. I laid the first row of polystyrene foam with sheets that are 50 millimeters thick. First, there's 50 millimeters of insulation under the ribs, and second, my blind area will also be insulated, which is enough. Under the floor I laid sheets that are 10 centimeters thick, meaning there were 2 layers of 10 centimeters each. So under the foundation ribs there is 50 millimeters of insulation, and under the floor there is 250 millimeters. For clarity, all layers of the insulated Swedish plate should look like this. follow the links in the description to view all my house design solutions. You can also see photos and download the projects. The ribs of my future insulated Swedish plate were formed thanks to the same polystyrene foam. For the inner part we used 2 sheets of 10 cm each under the floor, and for the outer part I took a 10 cm thick sheet and cut it in half lengthwise, cutting the 10 cm sheets. There were real problems, and most of the effort was needed specifically to cut the 10 cm sheets. I saw a video about Penoplex where a handsaw-like tool was used to cut polystyrene foam. I was like, a handsaw for polystyrene foam? That's what I thought, until I actually had to cut it myself. You can easily cut a sheet that's about 50 mm thick with a regular utility knife, but when it's 100 mm thick, the knife just can't get through. And I thought, well, that's not a big deal, I'll just cut it from both sides. But the knife bends like this, so you can't get it into the cut. And in the end you just get this kind of mess with a utility knife. Even if your hands aren't completely useless, it still won't be straight, damn it. I needed a saw to cut polystyrene foam, so I got one. I wouldn't even call it a knife though. Yeah, I thought it would be easier to cut foam sheets with a knife. If your foundation is over 100 square meters instead of 50 like mine, it's worth the extra effort. Make a device with a heated wire to cut the sheets, because then you get a very smooth cutting surface and everything goes much faster and better. In the end you get devices like that. It's not hard to make these provided you have, let's say, a welding inverter. Most of the work goes into trimming the sheets, especially the 10 cm ones. So before starting the work, I laid out all the sheets in AutoCAD, the first, second and third rows separately. It turned out that in practice, even the factory-made Penoplex sheets are crooked first of all, and secondly, they have a significant deviation in size, so over an area of 50 square meters, it ends up being a bit uneven. And there are some large gaps in places, plus the sheets get a bit crumpled during transportation, and some have dented edges, which also leads to small gaps when joining the sheets. Gaps appear in every row. I used construction foam on the Penoplex sheets that form the outer part of the ribs of my foundation. I also glued them with construction foam. I was surprised myself, but the construction foam holds them that well. If you apply the foam, press it, and hold it for just a few minutes while it dries, then the construction foam holds them so strongly along the ribs. You can walk on these Penoplex sheets. I cut the holes for the pipes with a knife. For thermal insulation, it's best to fill the gaps by plugging them with leftover pieces and scraps of polystyrene foam. Because I tried once to fill all of it with foam, all 250 millimeters, and it uses a lot of foam, which is expensive. So it's better to stuff scraps of polystyrene foam in there first, and only then use the foam. By the way, I usually use this kind. I've also tried adhesive foam. There's really no difference whether it's just foam or adhesive foam for attaching polystyrene. I haven't noticed any difference at all. I've also tried this one. It's almost twice as cheap and works just as well. The difference is that this one is polyurethane and this one is just regular foam. There was a problem with the delivery of the polystyrene. They delivered the correct volume but the wrong ratio of 50 and 100 millimeter sheets. They brought more 50 millimeter sheets. Then I thought, no problem, I'll just make 100 millimeter sheet out of 250 millimeter sheets. But I didn't take into account that they would need to be trimmed. Secondly, somehow I'll need to make 50 millimeters and 100 millimeters work together and there will be problems. On half of the foundation it turned out that instead of laying one row of 100 millimeters, I had to lay 2 rows of 50 millimeters. That means the labor required is doubled. Basically, all the edge sheets need to be trimmed. Not only do you have to lay them staggered, but every edge sheet also has to be trimmed. So, if you ever get a delivery where the total volume is correct but the sheet proportions are wrong, send it back. Make sure they bring you exactly the number of sheets and the thickness you ordered. Because during installation it takes us much more time. It's not a huge problem, but it just took a lot more time than we wanted. So I joined the 50 mm and 100 mm sheets together using a knife and some mounting foam. Since pouring concrete creates a lot of pressure, in order for our formwork to hold up, we need an external formwork made of boards. As external panels I used two boards that are 25 mm thick and 150 mm wide. The panels might seem flimsy and they bend quite a bit, but since we have this additional rib made of 10 mm foam board, they shouldn't bend. There are also supports with braces. I was very cautious and placed supports every 60 centimeters. Basically that's enough. You could actually put them every 1 meter 20 and use half as many supports. But I saw how the supports are spaced at least 1 meter 20 apart, because here we are planning for a blind area. According to the plan there was supposed to be another sheet here, but I just didn't have enough of it. And that's exactly why the stakes are driven in at least 1 meter 20 apart, because the sheet was supposed to end here. Here, the stakes were not very thick. They're about 20 by 30 and about 40 to 50 centimeters long. A friend really helped me out with the stakes. He gave me a whole box of ready-made stakes, so I didn't have to spend time and materials making them. Old boards are used as the lower braces, which my friend also had left over from redoing his floor, and they were exactly the right size. And that really helped out. I made the top part of the supports from a 30 by 40 beam, and I used high quality boards, first grade good boards, and the beam as well. I plan to reuse them when working on the roof, and I'll also need more formwork for the reinforced belt and lintels, so the boards will be used again. Because there's polystyrene here and no concrete there, the boards weren't affected. You can remove them and they'll still be good. The lower braces aren't screwed in. When I was driving in the stakes with an axe, I placed the stake a little closer than needed, just by a couple of millimeters, and then hammered the board in tightly. That's why they're standing very firmly. The upper part of the brace is screwed in on both sides so it doesn't go anywhere. During the pouring, the boards on the lower supports were a little different in size, give or take 10 centimeters. That's why I hammered the stakes in separately under each board without measuring anything, and then I used a miter saw to cut the upper braces to fit right on the spot. I thought it would be a bit of a hassle, but actually it turned out to be pretty quick, and I assembled all the outer braces in about one workday. Since the height of the ribs of my foundation is 30 centimeters, and half a sheet of Penaplex cut lengthwise is also about 30 centimeters. So it turned out perfectly, and I was able to set up the formwork. I specifically leveled the top of the formwork, because it's much easier to pour the concrete that way. It's super convenient to do the pouring when the formwork is leveled. It's almost midnight, and since it's white nights outside, there was no point in coming earlier. You can't see the level at all. I set the level exactly 10 centimeters above the polystyrene foam. I tried to make it even, but it still turned out crooked because I cut the polystyrene foam unevenly. That's why it ended up a bit crooked. As you can probably tell from the view behind me, the pouring is already done. The finished concrete under the film is gaining strength. The formwork proved to be more than reliable, even considering that the pouring was done using a concrete pump, which creates tremendous pressure on the concrete mix. And honestly, it really felt like we could have used braces half the size. After assembling the formwork, we need to tie the reinforcement cage for our foundation. We'll talk about that next time, so subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next video.